You're sitting at your kitchen table on a Wednesday morning, and your mother is telling you about her retirement. Not her plan for retirement. Her resignation to it. She's 58. She'll work until 67. Maybe 70 if her knees hold. She doesn't say it like someone who's made a choice. She says it like someone who's accepted a sentence. You've heard the same conversation 4 times now. From your mother. From your uncle. From your aunt who manages a dental office and somehow still lives paycheck to paycheck. From your father before he died, talking about the things he'd never own, the places he'd never see, like they were always meant for someone else's life. And here's the thing nobody warns you about. You can escape your family's money story. You can make more than they made. You can build things they never built. You can achieve what they called impossible. And still wake up terrified. Because you're not actually free. You're just running faster on the same track they ran on. The track that feels normal. The track that looks responsible. The track that has kept every single person in your bloodline broke enough to be afraid. This isn't about rich versus poor. This is about the invisible habits. The ones so normal nobody questions them. The ones so quiet that by the time you realize they're stealing your future, they've already stolen your family's past. And they're still running the show. Let's start with the story nobody tells about working hard. There's a man in your family. Could be your father. Could be an uncle. Could be you looking in the mirror in 5 years. He wakes up at 5:47 a.m., which is oddly specific. Not because he's optimizing his circadian rhythm. Because his job starts at 7 and the commute is an hour and 10 minutes. He's been doing this for 22 years. 22 years of 5:47 a.m. He's not doing this because he's passionate about his work. He's never mentioned being passionate about anything except maybe the Steelers, and that's just inherited pain. He's doing it because this is what you do. You get up. You go to work. You come home tired. You do it again. He makes decent money. Not rich. Decent. Enough that he has a house, which he's still paying for after 19 years. Enough that he has a car payment. Enough that he can take a vacation once a year to somewhere he doesn't really want to go because it's what families do. He's trapped in what I call the normalization of exhaustion. And here's where it gets dark. Nobody in his family questions this. His wife thinks he's dedicated. His kids think he's responsible. His boss thinks he's reliable. He thinks he's all 3 things. So nobody ever asks the question that would change everything. What if this isn't normal? What if this is just the story we agreed to believe? Because the moment you question it, you have to do something about it. Your grandfather worked the same schedule. Your father worked the same schedule. Now you're supposed to work the same schedule, except everything costs more. Houses cost more. Healthcare costs more. College costs more. And somehow you're supposed to make peace with the fact that working harder at a job you don't love is just the adult version of obedience. The habit looks like this. Habit 1. Trading time for money without asking why. You inherit this from your family not as a lesson but as an assumption. An assumption so deep that questioning it feels like laziness. Like you're not being grateful. Like you're ungrateful for the opportunity to wake up exhausted. Here's what your family never talks about in this habit. Your great-grandfather traded his time for money and died at 62. Your grandfather traded his time for money and worked until 67, then spent his retirement running out of money by 78. Your father traded his time for money and died without ever finishing a book he wanted to write. And the habit moves forward like it's inevitable. Like it's the cost of being alive. But here's what makes it a family trap. The people who escape it are rare enough that when they do, their families resent them. Because if you leave the grind, you're implying that the people still in it are the ones making the mistake. And most families will choose to defend the mistake together rather than admit it was ever a mistake at all. So you work. You work hard. You follow the rules. You get up at 5:47 a.m. You come home exhausted. And you teach your kids to do the same thing because that's what love looks like in your family. That's what responsibility looks like. Except it's not responsibility. It's inherited fear dressed up as dedication. Let's talk about the story your family tells itself about debt. There are certain kinds of debt that are acceptable in your family. Mortgage debt, that's responsible. Car debt, that's normal. Student loan debt, that's an investment in yourself. Credit card debt, that's an emergency tool, not a red flag. And there's one story that ties all of this together. The story that would run through every money conversation you had growing up. You have to spend money to make money. You heard this 1,000 times. From your parents. From your teachers. From your uncle who borrowed $8,000 to start a business that lasted 3 months. Everyone agrees on this story. It feels true. It sounds true. And by the time you're old enough to question it, you've already borrowed $60,000 for college and another $25,000 for a car, and you're wondering why you can't breathe. Habit 2. Normalizing debt as the price of admission. Here's what's invisible about this habit. Your family isn't teaching you about debt. Your family is teaching you about obedience to debt. There's a difference. You learn that debt is neutral. A tool. Something everyone uses. Your parents have a mortgage. Your uncle has a business loan. Your cousin has student loans. Your neighbor has a car payment. Debt is just what you do when you want something. What nobody ever shows you is the cost of that obedience. Your mother stayed in a job she hated for 14 years because she had a mortgage. Your father didn't take the promotion that required moving because the house was underwater. Your cousin didn't leave a relationship that was breaking her because she couldn't afford to move out. They all made logical choices based on their debt obligations. And the debt never got smaller. They just got older. Here's the invisible part of this habit that keeps families stuck. Debt creates obligation. Obligation creates fear. Fear creates obedience. And obedience feels like responsibility. So when your kid asks why they can't quit their job or take time to figure out what they want, you tell them about the mortgage. You tell them about the car payment. You tell them about the student loans. And you watch them understand, at age 25, that they've already made choices that will echo for the next 30 years. And they think this is normal. Because in your family it is. The trap is that debt isn't bad in itself, it's the way your family uses it without ever questioning it. It's the way debt becomes destiny. It's the way your parents' financial constraints become your psychological constraints. You're not free to make decisions. You're free to make payments. Here's a conversation that never happens in your family, an actual conversation about money. Your family talks around money. They talk about the cost of things. They talk about what they can't afford. They compare bills. They complain about taxes. They get angry at politicians for ruining the economy. But they never sit down and talk about how money actually works. Habit 3. Keeping money conversations private, which means keeping them secret. There's an unspoken rule in your family. You don't talk about what you make. You don't talk about what you have. You don't talk about what you owe. You don't talk about how much things actually cost. This rule feels like discretion. It feels mature. It feels respectful of people's privacy. What it actually is, isolation wrapped in manners. Because here's what happens when money conversations stay private. Your parents struggle silently. You watch them struggle, but you don't understand why. So you assume the struggle is inevitable. This is just what happens when you're an adult. You work, you pay bills, you worry, and you die. The end. You never see anyone actually solving a money problem, because solving it requires talking about it. So you never learn that solutions are possible. Your uncle makes the same mistake your father made with credit cards. But your father never told him, because you don't talk about money problems. So your uncle repeats the pattern. Your mother stays in a job she hates, and your siblings watch her, and they learn that this is what happens when you're a woman and you need money. Nobody ever tells them about options, because options are private conversations that don't happen. The money conversation that was never had with your great-grandfather gets passed down genetically. We're not the kind of people who have money. Nobody says it, but everyone believes it. And beliefs are stronger than facts. Here's what this habit actually costs your family. It costs knowledge. It costs wisdom. It costs the ability to break patterns. Because a pattern you can't talk about is a pattern you can't escape. It just becomes destiny. Your parents didn't teach you about money because their parents didn't teach them, and their parents didn't teach them. It's not stupidity. It's not laziness. It's a 4-generation silence that sounds like privacy but feels like drowning. And when you finally figure something out, you save money, you invest, you build something, you don't tell anyone. Because that's the rule. You keep it private. which means the next generation never learns it from you either. The money knowledge in your family isn't inherited. It's lost. Let me tell you about the thing your family will talk about. What they buy. Your mother talks about the sale she found. Your father talks about the truck he wants. Your uncle talks about the vacation they're planning. Your cousin talks about the designer purse. Everyone in your family has opinions about what things cost, and what they're worth, and what they mean about the person who owns them. Because in your family, money isn't about building wealth. Money is about spending. Habit 4. Using consumption to prove worth. This is subtle. This is invisible. This is the habit that looks like celebration but is actually a cry for help. Your brother gets a promotion. What happens? He buys a new car. Not because he needs it. Because the new car proves something. It says, "Look! I made it. I'm successful now. I deserve this." Except he doesn't deserve a debt payment. He deserves the promotion. But the promotion doesn't feel real until it's visible. Until it's tangible. Until it's something that other people can see and confirm. So the habit becomes, prove your value through visible consumption. Your father did this. Every time something went well, he'd buy something. A new tool he didn't need. A piece of equipment for the garage. Each one was a small monument to his success. Each one was a debt he didn't mention. Your mother does this. When she's stressed, she shops. When she's happy, she buys gifts. The spending is the expression of the emotion, not a decision. It's automatic. It's compulsive. It's learned. And here's what makes this a family trap. Your kids watch this. They learn that money is for proving things. That your value is visible. That success isn't success unless other people can see it. So they grow up and they make money and they spend it on the same things their parents spend it on. Not because they want them, but because spending it on them feels like being an adult. The car payment feels like achievement. The designer bag feels like success. The big house feels like proof that you made it. Except you didn't make it. You made a debt. And now you're chained to the job that pays for that debt so that everyone can see your success. This is what I call the consumption trap. And it's so normal in your family that you don't even see it. You see it when your cousin gets a promotion and immediately buys a truck he can't afford. You see it when your mother gets a tax refund and instead of saving it, she takes everyone to dinner to celebrate. You see it when your uncle's business does well for 1 month and he buys new furniture he doesn't have space for. And you don't see the cost. Because the cost isn't money. The cost is freedom. Here's the conversation that probably happened in your family. Your parent wanted to show you they loved you. But they couldn't do it through time. They were working. They couldn't do it through presents. They were exhausted. So they did it through money. They bought you something. They took you somewhere. They paid for something. And they called it love. Habit 5. Using money as a substitute for presents. This habit is subtle because it's wrapped in good intentions. Your parents genuinely believed they were showing you love by providing. By buying. By paying for things. They weren't wrong that provision is a form of love. But they were missing the entire second half of love, which is presents. Here's what happened in your family. Your father worked long hours to make money to pay for things you needed. And he thought that was love. He never sat with you. He never taught you anything. He was too tired. But he bought you things. And he thought that was the same as being there. Your mother juggled 2 jobs to pay for piano lessons and sports teams and camps. And she thought that was love. She wasn't at the recitals. She was working an extra shift. But she paid for them. And she thought that was the same as being there. And here's what you learned. Love is money. Care is buying things. Presence is paying for things. So when you became an adult, you had a broken model of love. You showed people you cared by spending money on them. You proved your affection through purchase. You demonstrated your worth through what you could buy. And the people in your family who couldn't afford to show love this way, they felt ashamed. They felt like they weren't being good parents. They felt like they were failing. So they worked harder. They spent more. They went into debt to prove that they could buy love. And the spiral continued. Here's what this habit actually costs. It costs connection. It costs real presence. It costs the ability to love without money. So when you're struggling financially, you feel like you're failing to love. You can't show your kid love without money, so you go into debt to do it. You can't show your parents love without buying them things, so you spend money you don't have. The love becomes conditional on the money. And when the money disappears, so does the proof of love. This is the invisible handcuff that keeps families stuck. Not money. Love that's tied to money. Your family doesn't talk about tomorrow. Not really. They might talk about next vacation. They might talk about Christmas. They might talk about paying off the house sometime far in the future when they're old. But they don't plan for the future. They endure it. Habit 6. Sacrificing the future for the present. Here's how this habit works. Your mother could have invested money, but she needed new clothes. Your father could have built savings, but he needed a new truck. Your grandparents could have owned their house by now, but they needed to renovate it. Every single financial decision is made for right now. For today. For the visible, immediate need. And the future? The future is just something that happens to you. Your parents didn't save for retirement because saving felt like deprivation. It felt like sacrifice. It felt like punishing yourself today for a future you might not even have. So they didn't. They spent. And now the future is here and they're 62 years old, and they're not ready. Your uncle didn't invest money because investing felt risky. It felt complicated. It felt like something rich people do. So he kept cash under the mattress, where inflation slowly ate it. And now he's 55 and he's panicking because he didn't do anything 30 years ago. Your grandparents didn't buy the house when they could have. They rented. They said they'd buy later. And later became never. And now the money they paid in rent went to someone else's future, while their own future became someone else's responsibility. Here's what this habit teaches your kids: the future isn't real. The present is all that matters. Sacrifice is for suckers. Delayed gratification is a myth. So they grow up and they do the same thing. They don't save. They don't invest. They don't plan. They just spend and hope it works out. And it doesn't work out. It never works out. Because the future always arrives. It always becomes the present. And when it does, you're not ready. And you panic. And you make desperate decisions. And your kids watch you make desperate decisions, and they think that's normal too. This is the habit that's currently stealing your family's future. And everyone knows it's happening. Nobody talks about it. But everyone knows. Here's what your family believes about financial education: it's for rich people. Your parents didn't take a class in investing because that's what rich people do. Your uncle didn't read a book about building wealth because that's for people who already have money. Your grandmother didn't learn about budgeting because that felt pretentious. That felt like putting on airs. Habit 7. Treating financial knowledge like it's a luxury good instead of a basic survival skill. This is the habit that guarantees the others keep working. Because if you never learn how money works, you can't escape the system that's keeping you trapped. You can't see that there's another way. You can't imagine a different future. You can just accept the one you're inheriting. Your family passed down traditions, recipes, stories, values. Everything except the one piece of knowledge that would actually set you free. How to make money work for you instead of working for money. And here's the cruel part. The people who need this knowledge most are the ones least likely to get it. Because it costs money to learn. You have to buy books. You have to take courses. You have to spend time studying instead of working. You have to sacrifice the present for knowledge about the future. And your family doesn't do that. Your family sacrifices the future for the present, which is the exact opposite of what you need to do. So the knowledge gap widens. The rich people's kids learn how to invest from their parents. Your family's kids learn how to work hard and not question anything. And 100 years later, your family is still working hard and not questioning anything, while the other family's money has been compounding for generations. This is the invisible ceiling that keeps your family stuck. Not stupidity. Not laziness. Just the belief that understanding money is something other people do. Let me show you how these 7 habits work together. Your great-grandfather traded his time for money, habit 1, because he had to. His family kept him in debt, habit 2, so he couldn't leave. He never talked about it, habit 3, so nobody learned from his mistakes. When he had a little money, he spent it on things to prove his worth, habit 4. He showed his kids love through what he could buy, habit 5. He never saved for the future, habit 6. And he never learned that there was another way. Habit 7. So he worked until he died. Poor. Exhausted. Unaware that he was trapped. Your grandfather inherited all 7 habits. He did the exact same things. He worked until he died. Poor. Exhausted. Unaware that he was trapped. Your father inherited all 7 habits. He did the exact same things. He worked until he died. Poor. Exhausted. Unaware that he was trapped. And now you're inheriting all 7 habits. And you're starting to do the same things. And unless something breaks the cycle, your kids will inherit them too. This is what a generational trap looks like. It's not one bad decision. It's 7 invisible habits so normal that nobody questions them. And together, they create a future that looks exactly like the past. The heartbreaking part is that none of these habits are stupid. They all make sense in isolation. Trading time for money makes sense if you need money, and that's the only way you know to get it. Normalizing debt makes sense if everyone around you is in debt. Keeping money private makes sense if you've been taught that money is shameful. Spending on visible things makes sense if you're trying to prove your worth. Using money to show love makes sense if that's how your parents showed it to you. Sacrificing the future makes sense if the present is all you can manage. And treating knowledge as a luxury makes sense if knowledge costs money that you don't have. Every single habit makes sense in isolation. Together, they make a prison. So here's the question that matters: how do you break it? And the answer is uncomfortable. You have to become the person your family didn't know they needed. You have to be the one who asks questions. You have to be the one who talks about money. You have to be the one who learns. You have to be the one who changes. And your family will resent you for it. Not because you're wrong, but because your escape implies their trap. Your freedom proves their cage. Your success shows that the system they accepted wasn't inevitable, it was just accepted. And families are very good at punishing the person who leaves. But here's what I know, because I've watched it happen: the moment one person breaks one of these habits, everything changes. The moment you start talking about money, your siblings start asking questions. The moment you stop using consumption to prove your worth, your cousin notices. The moment you start reading about investing, your mother gets curious. The moment you stop sacrificing your future for your present, your father realizes something's possible. You don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to become rich overnight. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be the first person in your family to ask a question instead of accepting an answer. And then you have to be brave enough to actually answer it. Let me tell you what I know about generational wealth and generational poverty. They're not determined by luck. They're not determined by opportunity. They're determined by what people talk about at the table. In wealthy families, they talk about returns and investments, and compound interest and tax strategy, and real estate and business. Money is a topic. Money is discussed. Money is learned about the way you learn about anything that matters. In families stuck in the patterns I just described, they don't talk about money. They talk around it. They whisper about it. They feel ashamed of it. They pretend it's not important even though it controls everything. And because they don't talk about it, they don't learn it. And because they don't learn it, they can't pass it to the next generation. And because they can't pass it, the next generation makes the same mistakes. Except the mistakes are getting more expensive. Your great-grandfather needed to work hard to survive. Your grandfather needed to work hard to get ahead. Your father needed to work hard to stay in place. You're working hard just to not fall backward. And your kids are going to have to work even harder. Unless someone breaks the pattern. Here's what I want you to understand: the cost of staying is hidden. The cost of leaving is visible. Staying costs you 40 years of your life. Staying costs you your health. Staying costs you your presence with your kids. Staying costs you the future. But it's all invisible. It just feels like responsibility. It just feels like normal. It just feels like life. Leaving costs you conflict with your family. Leaving costs you the confusion of doing things differently. Leaving costs you the discomfort of not knowing if it'll work. But it's all visible. And it all feels like risk. So people stay. They do the same 7 habits their parents did. They tell themselves it's responsible. They tell themselves it's loving. They tell themselves it's necessary. And they die before they ever ask if there was another way. I want to end with a different image. Imagine your kid, 30 years from now, sitting at a table with their own kids. And your grandkid asks them, "How did our family get its money?" In one version of this future, your kid says what your parents said. "We worked hard and we didn't ask questions and we accepted that this was just how it was." In another version, your kid says something different. They talk about the moment you decided to question the habits. They talk about the first conversation about money at the dinner table. They talk about the first time you invested. They talk about the first time you said no to consumption and said yes to your future instead. They talk about the first time you kept learning instead of accepting. And they say, "My parent broke the pattern." That moment, that conversation, doesn't cost money. It costs courage. It costs the willingness to be different. It costs the acceptance that your family might not understand. It costs the faith that breaking one habit might break them all. But it's the only thing that actually breaks the cycle. Because families don't reset. They learn the new shape of themselves and go on. And if you're the one who teaches them that shape, the one who shows them it's possible to be different, to choose differently, to know differently, then the shape you're teaching them becomes the shape they pass to the next generation. And maybe, just maybe, you become the person your family didn't know they needed. Maybe you become the first. The invisible rich philosophy. Wealth isn't about how much you make. It's about what you know about what you make. It's not about being rich. It's about understanding the habits that make people invisible to themselves, and then choosing to see. This is invisible rich.